All right, Gator fans. Today I am joined by former Gator Chris Doering, who now spends his time talking college football on ESPN and the SEC network. All right, Chris, let's get into it. You spend a lot of time around our football program and a lot of others. What were you expecting from the Gators heading into this season?
Yeah, it's funny, my opinion kinda changed a little bit. During the offseason, I went on record when we were in Nashville for SEC Media Days thinking Florida was gonna win under the Vegas posted total of 5.5. And then as I was around more people that had been out amongst the team and having spent some time at practice myself, I kinda changed what I was thinking, especially, prior to the Utah game, thinking Florida was gonna catch them at a good time with Cam Rising being out and their tight end being out. And then catching Tennessee early in the season before Joe Milton's really been able to kind of get his feet underneath him. So I thought Florida could probably exceed that 5.5 win total. I still think there's a chance of it, but honestly, this is a year about kind of I almost look at it as year one, even though it's year two for Coach Napier. The roster purge and rebuild I think is significant. So just getting to bowl eligibility to me is a good year, and I think if we win 7 games, it's a need to celebrate for sure.
So, after the first two games, do you think you're more or less confident that they're bowl eligible than you were the day before we played Utah?
Yeah, but probably it's waxed and waned a little bit. I think after watching the disarray with which we played against Utah, I was worried that it'd be hard to maybe even get to 4 wins. But I thought just lining up properly, forget the opponent in McNeese State, getting lined up properly, knowing who's supposed to be on the line of scrimmage, getting the right jersey numbers in the game. I mean, some procedural things that I thought Florida executed much better was important for me to see. I'm a big fan of this defense. I think Austin Armstrong's doing a great job. I think you're going to see against Tennessee really let those guys kind of loose, and I think they've upgraded the talent on that side of the ball. I'm impressed with Graham Mertz so far. There's certainly a lot more playmakers around him, but this will be another test. The offensive line didn't do a great job against Utah, and I think it's your success as an offense really comes down to how long and how successful you're able to block. And I think this is an offensive line that has some potential, and getting Kingsley back at the center spot will be big. But at the end of the day, if you can't block, if you can't run block, I mean, it's going to be a long afternoon.
So, you spend a lot of time studying really a lot of top programs and talking with people from all of those different programs and kind of all over the country that cover those teams. What do you think the national perception of Florida is currently?
I think after watching the way we played on that Thursday night, it's kind of a laughing stock, to be honest with you. I mean, you talk about self-inflicted wound after self-inflicted wound. I don't think you could do more. You're already having to go beat Utah, a really good program, in front of all their fans, and then you're having to beat yourself too. I heard a lot of jokes, but the great part about our game was that it was Thursday night, and then South Carolina struggled the way they did, and then LSU struggled the way they did. So a lot of people forgot about what the Florida Gators went through on that opening Thursday night. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's really in 2 weeks in, it's an interesting Southeastern Conference, and this is my ninth season working for the SEC Network, and I don't know that I've ever had to go on camera and be more of an apologist and more of a guy eating humble pie than what I've had to the last couple Saturdays. But I think a lot of us share in the same problem in this league, and that's struggling on the line of scrimmage. We talk about it all the time, being a line of scrimmage league, but we're getting pushed around by ACC teams, by Pac-12 teams, and I think that is probably more of a result of NIL and transfer portal stuff. That the depth is not there that it usually is amongst some of the teams in the SEC, and the talent has been dispersed to a lot of different programs, which is great if you're outside of this program. But
Sure, sure.
from the standpoint of the superiority complex we've developed in the SEC, it makes it a little humbling.
So, what about Billy Napier? Do you think that there's this national perception that he's on the hot seat in year two? Is that overblown? I think that, Gator fans know he
Yeah.
needs more time than 2 years, but there's a lot of national media people that list him on their hot seat
Yeah,
list.
those are people that have no idea the circumstances at Florida. I don't think even Florida fans, I don't think realize the nature of the rebuild that Billy Napier was tasked with. basically the old tear it down to the studs and start over is kind of what has happened here. So again, I go back to that analogy. Even though it's year two, it seems like year one, because of all that's had to be recreated, and figuring out the culture. The culture, you could see the culture slipping at the end of the season last year, the way that things went in the month of November, the way that the bowl game went. I think that you're seeing guys that believe, guys that buy in. I think you're seeing new leaders emerge, and that was one of the things I heard frequently when I was around the program in the spring, is what a great leader Graham Mertz has been. You could see the first game of the season, even though things didn't go Florida's way, he was at the line of scrimmage getting him into the right plays. I thought he knew where to go with the football. So there's a lot that I think is exciting about the future, including the success on the recruiting trail. But all of those things have to take time, and you got to be able to get guys on campus, develop them, continue to stack good recruiting classes on top of good recruiting class. And it's something that unfortunately we're going to have patience with, and that is the frustration that we feel is even more magnified with Deion Sanders going to Colorado and the success they have right off the bat, the success that Tennessee had in Josh Heupel's year too. Shane Beamer in South Carolina last year winning 8 games. So the thing that I think Florida fans need to realize is that it's a different situation at Florida than it is everywhere else, and that requires a little time and patience and support. I get sick of the negativity on social media. I know that's a small vocal minority of the fan base, but it really, the idea of being a fan, it's changed from being one that supports the team and the program to somebody that thinks they have a right to bitch and complain all the time.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, I'm a big fan of the quote, comparison is the thief of
I
joy.
love that. Mm-hmm.
But, some fans can't help it. And you're right. When you see things happening in Boulder, when you see even, LSU, programs like that really very quickly turning things around, what makes us different than what was going on in Boulder, per se?
Well, I think a lot of it, I don't know the numbers exactly, but what was it, close to like 60, 70, 80 new players on that roster? I mean, they went out and really completely just overhauled the whole thing. And Deion Sanders talking about his luggage arriving, his Louis and everything. I mean, Florida did that to some degree, but I think one, and I guess we're not coming from a position of being able to speak right now, but they're playing a little different level of competition.
Correct.
Um, Although we did get beat by a Pac-12 team, so maybe I'm being a hypocrite here. But I don't know. I think that there's a lot that had to be overhauled, and who knows what happens with Colorado the rest of the season. I think we're all kind of cheering for them to do well. It's a great story to start the season, but they got two tough upcoming games here in the next couple of weeks, and so I think that success happens it doesn't happen in a linear way. And so sometimes there's setbacks and challenges that you have to overcome, but I think it's important that you stay the course. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me doing last 2 spring games with Billy Napier is just the plan that he has and the patience and detail with which he executes that plan.
All right, let's focus on Saturday. Really big game against Tennessee. And the Volunteers historically struggle in Gainesville. I was looking at the win-loss totals today, and it's
Yeah.
5 times since 1953 Tennessee has won in Gainesville. So what do the Gators need to do to get a win on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that Florida has to look at is their own execution. Again, the improvement from week 1 to week 2, and forget about the opponent. The penalties were way down. You look at the red zone efficiency; it was way up. The ability to protect the quarterback is a big part of it too. So I think Florida being able to minimize the mistakes and protect the football and offense. This is a defense too that I think is going to see some unique. They're going to throw some unique things at Tennessee. I think you'll see when you play Tennessee's offense. I think you have to be extreme. The idea of just rushing 4 and dropping 7 is not. It's exactly what they want you to do. So either bring the house like Georgia did and make the quarterback feel uncomfortable with this short drop in the pocket, or drop 8 into coverage and make them find a hole to throw it into. The thing that I noticed, I watched. Tennessee's offense against Austin Peay on tape on the plane home today. They're not hitting the explosive plays that Hendon Hooker hit last year. They've only had 4 explosive pass plays of 20 yards or more. A lot of that has to do with some of the inaccuracies of Joe Milton, but there's also a lot of receivers that are dropping balls and offensive linemen that are busting their protection. So football is the greatest team sport in the world. It takes all 11 people doing their job individually to make the offensive unit successful. And so I think there's a lot of places that Florida can attack, and I think that's the important word: be aggressive. And Austin Armstrong is the ultimate aggressor. Just even being out at practice and talking to him and watching him, he's going to be aggressive. You're going to get your money's worth at the play. There's no walking. They're going to either hit a home run or they're going to strike out, but they're going to go hard at it.
Do you personally have a favorite memory from the Tennessee rivalry?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of memories. Some not great, and most of them really good. My first catch came against Tennessee in 1992. I was still a walk-on there, but I'd made the travel squad. We were getting blown out by Heath Schuler and the rest of that Tennessee team up in Neyland there before they had taken the turf out and put grass in. It's pouring down rain. I'm on the sideline. The water's up to about our knees. It's cascading down the steps. We're getting blown out. I get into the ball game with our third string quarterback, Antoine Childs, who had an absolute rocket for an arm. He throws me a curl route that bounces off, goes right through my hands, bounces off my shoulder pads straight up into the air and comes down to my hands. And I catch a pass. And it's funny because you go back, the people on my radio show get a kick out of it. They have the audio, and it's actually David Steele saying, caught by 28. I don't have 28 on my 2 deep or even 3 deep. And so nobody really knew who I was. And it's funny because as we sit here recording this, today is the 30-year anniversary of my catch against Kentucky and how different my life changed from 92 to 93. But that was not a great memory. And on the way home, that we were losing altitude and had to dive down, or we're losing pressure in the cabin, had to dive down at altitude. The mask came down. I'm eating the food they just passed out on the plane. Danny Warfel's next to me. I look over at him. Everybody else is freaking out. He's just calmly eating his steak. And I know he and his relationship with God, I felt like we were in good hands, so we're able to relax a bit. But we had an emergency landing in Atlanta, and a lot of guys drove home from there. Ellis Johnson, our great defensive tackle, never flew again with us. He drove with the equipment every game on the road, and so that was a unique memory. But probably my favorite memory was my senior year in 95. We were down by double digits right before halftime. Ike Hilliard caught a touchdown to cut it to single digits, and we scored on like 7 straight possessions. And I caught a touchdown, in the waning minutes of the game and the driving rain that, kept a streak of touchdown receptions and games going for me. So it was fun, man. We dominated the series after that 92 loss, but playing here in the swamp with the fans that we have and the disdain that they have for Tennessee was one of my favorite memories for sure.
Those are some of my.
I hit you with a lot, didn't I, Allie?
Yes, but this is like literally some of the favorite stories that I've ever been told on here. The fact that he drove every game with the equipment guys from there on out is hysterical.
Yeah, he played in the NFL for a long time too. Had to get over that, and ironically, I hear he's gotten his pilot license now, and he's actually a pilot. So it comes full circle.
Literally conquering your fears there.
Yep.
All right. So what is your perception? We talked a little bit about your perception, of the SEC and how it kind of 2 games in appears to be maybe down a little bit, but think about it in context of UF's schedule. There's obviously tough games against Georgia and LSU. We also throw Florida State in there, obviously not an SEC opponent, but based on what we've seen the first 2 weeks of the year from the conference, our schedule maybe seems a little bit more manageable than it did prior to the beginning of the season. Do you think that maybe we get a few more wins simply because these games that we thought maybe were going to get out of hand are toss-ups, or Florida's even maybe a favorite in them?
I love your rosy colored glasses. I mean, as bad as we're looking at everybody else, I think we could probably look in the mirror and seem like, at least against better competition, we look pretty bad. So it's still early in the year. Unfortunately for the SEC, your reputation is built in week 1 and week 2. And as you get into the months towards October, end of October and early November, when the College Football Playoff Committee meets, the hay is in the barn in terms of what you were able to do against out-of-conference opponents. So I think there's a lot of parity nationally. I think there's a lot of parity within this conference. I think you'll see a lot of cannibalism within this league. And, I think it's really about being able to survive and advance. And so, yeah, maybe they're a little more manageable. I mean, we were, and believe me, I know this with my bet with Peter Burns, but we were 21-point favorites in the swamp in 2020, I think, 13-point favorites in 2021, lost both of those games. So even none of that really matters. I mean, Coach Napier said to me when we were in Nashville right after I had to pay off the baseball bet that
Saw that baseball uniform.
he said, "Man, we got to get this losing streak broken for you." So I hope he's serious about that. It would be nice to have that monkey off my back, but I think there's still a lot to be told. And one of the things that you saw from LSU last year, and I don't know how we're on that topic specifically, but the improvement from week 1 to week 12, week 13 was significant. I think it gives hope for teams like Florida, South Carolina, LSU this year that you can make some improvement throughout the year. But you really don't have a great sense of who you don't even really have a great sense of who Georgia is with the injuries surrounding that team, Lad McConkey being out and Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton not being 100%, Carson Beck getting his feet wet. Like I don't even know who we can trust in this conference. I don't know who is who at this point. Somebody asked me recently, who's the second best team in the East? I couldn't tell you. I don't really know. I thought it was Kentucky before the season, but they look terrible against Eastern Kentucky. I don't know who is what right now. And if you know, I'd appreciate you helping me out for sure.
Oh, well, got no idea over here. I have my, I know who I hope it is,
Yeah.
but I'm not particularly confident. All right. So, what is considered a successful season for Florida? What record are we looking at that we're saying, okay, we've seen growth from last year to this year, and now we'll move into year 3, confident we'll grow a little bit more?
Yeah, I don't know if you can measure growth strictly in wins and losses. I think growth has to do with the way that you look, and I think that was one of the things that was most frustrating to a lot of Gator fans, including myself. In the opener was, here we are, we're trying to make strides. We've got the right people in place. We're told that the
Except
offense.
the special teams coach.
Yeah. But we're told the offense is going to be better in year 2, despite losing Anthony Richardson. And then you go out there, you give up 5 sacks, you can't run the ball a lick. You're having a hard time staying on sides. You can't get the play calls in. There's a lot that was frustrating about that. Hopefully, they clean those things up and you can get better as the year goes on. But I think that would be a sign of growth is just execution, efficiency. You look around the country, some teams it looks so easy when they move the football. For Florida, it seems so hard. It doesn't come very smoothly. And I've played on some offenses where things just looked easy and other ones that were more difficult, but I want to see the offense be efficient. I think it has that chance with Graham Mertz. I think he understands the offense. They can put more of the playbook in. He can, check at the line more than probably Florida was doing last year. So from that respect, I think it'll be better. There's more playmakers around him. I've been impressed with obviously Ricky Pearsall's growth, but looking at Trey Wilson and what he's done and seeing some of the Marcus Burke stepping up in week 1 and watching, I'm hopeful Khalil Jackson comes back, but there's a lot I think you can be excited about. But I want to see the growth of just execution throughout the season. In terms of wins and losses, Florida could very well win 6 games this year, be a lot better team, and not necessarily feel better about your improvement in terms of wins. I would be thrilled with a 7-win season, and I think that's humbling for me to say that the bar has been kind of set that low, but that's kind of where we are right now as a program.
I agree. I think 7-5 would be, that would be growth for
But
sure.
look at. Hey, I'm terrified of next year. I mean,
I mean, that schedule
adding
is
Miami, yeah, adding UCF, having Florida State where they are. It's the great thing that I think about though. Watch what has happened at Florida State. The fact that they were patient with Mike Norvell. Many Seminole boosters wanted to get him out of there. They didn't have the money to be able to buy him out, so they kind of stuck with him. But it's paid dividends now. They're starting to get some traction. I think the same thing could happen here at Florida. Maybe not the timeline that Florida fans want, but with some patience and allowing the growth of the program through recruiting classes that are coming in and being developed. I think hopefully we can get there as well.
all right. Not going to let you get out of here without this. What is the final score this season when Tennessee comes to the Swamp?
Oh man, I'm actually we're talking about this on a Monday night here, Allie. You put me on the spot. I don't know. I haven't quite made up my mind yet. After watching the Tennessee tape, I feel that Tennessee is a lot more gettable maybe than I thought they were prior to the season. I was impressed with the offensive and defensive lines in that game against Virginia, but I think some of the success they had was maybe a result of just how bad Virginia was on the line of scrimmage. I think catching again Joe Milton in his first real hostile environment start in the SEC is a big time benefit for Florida. So I'm not ready to commit yet. I'll text you. You'll be the first one I text when I figure it out though. All right.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Before you go, tell people where they can watch you. You have a crazy, insane schedule. You are everywhere.
Yeah.
But Tell us where we can find you this fall.
All good stuff. SEC Network have a lot going on there. I'm on Friday mornings with SEC This Morning. We do the preview show on SEC Now Friday night. I'm in the studio all day and all night on our Saturday triple header that we do and studio support, and then finish up the weekend with SEC This Morning on Monday morning. So me and my guy Peter Burns kind of bookend the weekend there on the preview and the wrap up shows.
All right. Well, we so appreciate you giving our show a little bit of time tonight. This was
I appreciate you. I want to say this real quick. Like, you and I have been texting about coming on the show for a long time. It hasn't come to fruition. You've been patient with me. You've been persevering and continuing to follow up. And more so than anything, you were understanding with my 45-minute tardiness tonight. So thank you, Allie, for your patience.
Oh my gosh, of course. I have 4 children. I understand tardiness more than most for sure. But we appreciate you. Have a good night. Good luck this weekend with all your shows, and go Gators.
Thank you. Go Gators.